All right, one of the sayings at the university where I teach is that the students should light the world aflame, and what we're going to do is we're going to work with lights right now, specifically light strips of neopixel lights. So we're going to learn how to attach these to the CPB, how to control them. It's very similar to the way that we control the built-in neopixels on our board, and we're going to have two challenges. One is the Strip Brightness Pulse, and the other is Chase in Orange. So we're going to attach this strip of 30 neopixel lights to our Circuit Playground Bluefruit. Now in electronics, when we work with an external device, we usually have 3 wires. We've got power, which is red, we've got ground, which is black, and we've got signal, which is white. Now the signal is what is going to receive, in our case, commands from our Circuit Playground Bluefruit and control the lights, which lights light up, what patterns they use, set the brightness, and those types of things. So we're going to take the ground and we're going to attach it to GND. We're going to take the signal and we're going to attach that to A1. And we're going to take the red wire, the power wire, and attach that to our V out pad or pin. And now that we've got everything set up, we can actually go ahead and plug in our Circuit Playground Bluefruit. And let's take a look at what we need to code. Now the code we're going to use is very similar to the code that we wrote to control the 10 neopixel lights that are on our board. The first thing that we did was we gave all of these lights a name, and we called them pixels. Well, down here we're going to give the light strip a name too, and we figure we'll call this strip, although you can call it whatever you want. Now, instead of referring to the neopixel lights that are on the board, we're going to refer to A1, which is where we clipped our white wire, which is our signal wire. And then over here, we don't have 10 neopixels on our board. We have on our neopixel strip, we've got 30 lights. Now, the way that we control this programmatically is very similar to the way that we did it before. So if we say pixels.fill indigo, we can say strip.fill indigo. And if we say pixels 4 equals red, we can say strip 4 equals red. Now, one other thing, we might want to loop through all of the lights or use the number of lights on occasion, but we might want to take our code and reuse it for longer strips or shorter strips. So instead of hard coding the 30 in here and then perhaps having to repeat and change that 30 at other places, it would be better programming practice if we set a variable num of lights and then used that every place we need to refer to the number of lights on our strip. But now that we've got this, let's go ahead and code this up. One other thing that I want to point out, though, that will give you a problem, you know what I'll do is I'll actually cause the error first so that you can see that in action, and then we'll deal with it. And I'll let you know in advance, we are already using pin A1 for capacitive touch. And even though we're not using it in this particular program, we have it in the bulk code block that we've been using to set up our projects. So I'll show you how we can disable that, but first I want to show you the error. So if you ever encounter something like this in your coding, you'll know what to do and you'll be able to recognize that. So now we're over here. After I had set up our pixels, I'm going to go up and set the neopixel strip. Set up a strip of 30 lights connected to A1. And what I'll do is I'll just grab this line right here and I'll paste it down here, and instead of calling it pixels, I'll call it strip. And these are going to be connected not to the default neopixels that are on my board, but to pin A1. And down here, instead of putting in 30, we're going to say num of lights, and we'll say equals 30. And then I'll take this variable num of lights and put it in here, and now I have a strip of lights that are connected to A1 that I can refer to just as strip. Now, I'm going to go ahead and write my code, and then we'll make some changes to it. And I'm going to highlight the code that was in my while true loop and just delete that and start fresh, making sure that I've indented. And let's type in the same code that we're showing here. And so we'll show what happens with the pixels. We can actually light things up on our neopixels that are on the board, as well as the neopixels that are on the strip, by using these two different blocks of code. So first what we'll do is we will say pixels.fill, and in parentheses, indigo, and then we'll say pixels 4 equals red. And then what we'll do is just to pause a little bit in between here, why don't we say time sleep 2.0, and we'll do a time sleep 2.0 here. And now we'll do the same command here, but watch, all I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the word pixels for strip, and I'm going to do the same down here as well. We'll light up the 4th light in red on our strip too. We have to change the name pixels to strip. So now that we've got this set up, what we want to do in our loop very briefly here, and what I'll do is I will then wait 2 seconds, and why don't we set the whole both pixels.fill to black, and we'll set strip.fill to black. And this pattern will repeat itself over and over again. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select save. And if I open my serial monitor, I can get a sense of why this isn't working here. And again, I'll click on save and it says error in line 71. So let's see where 71 is right here. And it says value error A1 is in use. Well, this is showing up here. Wait a second, with touchpad IO. Oh yeah, if we go up, we have already used board A1 for our strip. So if we try to use it with the pads after the command where we set it up as part of the strip, which is, see how we use this up here first in setting up the strip with A1. So if we scroll down here, since we're not using capacitive touch right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out this whole block of code. I do want to make sure that I move armed out of the touchpad block because I may still want armed in a future project where I'm using strip but not touchpads. So I'm just going to put it right before the function itself, and then I'll use a block comment to block out all my touchpad code since I'm not using it. I'm going to do 3 double quotes in a row. And then after the for loop where I set up the touchpads, and now it's just before my armed, I'm going to do 3 double quotes as well, and that'll close this comment block. So now with this done, this block of code should work for me. I'm going to keep my serial monitor open to make sure that everything is looking okay. I'm going to click on save and we'll see what happens. And we see indigo here, and then we see a red light, and then we see all these guys turn indigo. And we see a red light on the 4th pixel over here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's actually the 5th pixel. And they should all shut off and then start again. And it does a really quick flash here because I don't do any wait before I start up again. But this is working. So hopefully now you know how to work with NeoPixel strips. Now let's do a couple of quick challenges. In a previous challenge, when we were learning about for loops, we did a challenge called brightness, where we set pixel brightness from 0 to 1, increasing by increments of 1% each time and waiting 1/100th of a second in between. Now what we want to do this time is the same thing, but we want to do it on the strip as well. And you can choose any color you want. Why don't you pause right here, and then we'll solve this together when you get back. And we're back. And one thing that you can do is actually pull up your old code. So I happen to remember where my brightness.py code was, so I am going to go ahead and load that in from my desktop. I had saved that, pulling up brightness.py right here, and I'm going to scroll down into my loop. And I'm going to grab what was in while true. You can see now that I've opened up brightness.py. I've got a new tab up here that says brightness.py. I'm going to do a Command C or Control C under Windows to grab this code. I'm going to go back over to code.py now, and I can close my brightness.py because I don't need this. And I am going to highlight all of the code that was in this while true loop and paste it with the stuff to make the pixels themselves pulse. But now, instead of having the pixels pulse, I'm going to have strip pulse. So in this example, I'm going to set it to indigo, and range 101 will take me from the number 0 through the number 100. And in fact, what I'll do is, why don't I pulse both of them? So I'll set the strip indigo to fill, and I'll say, I'll also say my pixels to fill. So here's all of the stuff about pixel brightness. What I'll do is I'll also say strip.brightness equals 1 divided by 100. And then I'll sleep, and then down here what I'll do is I'll say strip.brightness equals I divided by 100 as well. And I didn't need to have my serial monitor up, but I can keep it open while I do a save. It'll let me know if there are any errors here. And let's see how things look. So we can see we're pulsing. This is looking good, and we're pulsing back down, and it's doing it on the entire strip. So hopefully you're feeling pretty good about your ability to manipulate a whole light strip. And let's have just one more challenge. We'll call this one the Orange Chaser. What we're going to do is we're going to have an effect where it looks like a single orange pixel is being chased around the NeoPixel strip. So what we're going to do first is inside of our while true loop is we'll set all of our pixels to black. We will, and when we refer to pixels here, we're referring to the lights on the strip as opposed to pixels, which are the is the name that we gave the circle of built-in lights on the CPB. After we've set them to black, we're going to loop through all of the pixels on the strip. Hint, that means the num of lights that we created. We're going to turn on the first pixel to orange. We're going to wait for 1/2 of 1/10 of a second. We're going to turn on the next pixel to orange, and we're going to turn off the previous pixel so that that's black. We're going to wait again, and we're going to repeat this for all of the pixels in the strip and then restart. So you want to think about, you move forward in a loop of 1 at a time or 2 at a time, and how do you handle your sleep time? So why don't you pause here, give it a try, see what you come up with, and if you want to, we can code it together after. And you know what, before I get rid of my while true, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the brightness of my lights. So my strip brightness was originally set to 0.3. I'm going to set it to 1.0, just crank it all the way up. You might want to lower that if you're going to be operating off of batteries. And now let's go ahead and modify our while true loop. Now we said we want to go through all of the pixels that we've got. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, first we're going to set our strip pixels to black. So we're going to do strip fill black. Then we're going to go through all of the lights in our strip. So we're going to say for I in range, and the number of pixels that we have, or the number of lights we have, we could put in 30, but it's much better practice to do num of lights. And now you can see, and I'll do colon and press enter here, if we were to add a strip that had 60 lights instead of 30, we would just need to change the one value above, and then any code that we wrote will be changed so that it can work on the new number of lights that we changed above. So now that we've got this set up, the first thing that we want to do is we want to set our very first pixel in this sequence to orange. So we'll say strip I equals orange. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wait. So we'll say time.sleep, and I said to do that as 0.05, so just a little bit of a delay in there. And then what we're going to do is we are going to turn off this pixel, and we are going to turn on the very next pixel. So we're going to say strip I equals black, and we're going to say right after this strip I plus 1, and we're going to say this equals orange. So once we've done this, then we want to do another sleep in here. So we'll do the sleep at the same time. I'll just copy and paste this right in here. Now there's a couple of other tricks that we want to pay attention to. One is, now before we go ahead and restart here, we want to set that first pixel to black, because when we restart at our next pixel in here, we're going to set it to orange. And if there's no delay in here, it gives us the same sort of effect where we set one to black and one to orange. So I'm going to say in here, strip I plus 1 equals black. Now, there's one thing that you might notice. If we do this right now, it's not going to give us the exact effect that we want, because we're going to start off at pixel 0, and then we're going to go to pixel 1, pixel 2, pixel 3. But here, when we start with pixel 0, we're dealing with pixel 0 and pixel 1 both. So what we want to do when we get to the next one is we're turning off pixel 1. We want to start with pixel 2. So do you remember how we go through by steps of 2? Well, we can use 3 different parameters in our range here. So if we have num of lights, we just go from 0 up to, but not including the number of lights. So 1 less than num of lights. But here what we can do is we can say, okay, let's start at 0, go up to, but not including the number of lights here. So because we're 0 indexed, that's why we stop at, instead of going up to 30, we'll be at 29 because the 30th light is labeled number 29. But we're going to say comma 2 in here, which will go up in increments of 2. So now that we've got this all set up, what I'm going to do is take a look at what we've got on our NeoPixels here. And let's save our work and see how things look. And there we go. We're going around and around and around. It's chasing the lights. It's looking perfect. So hopefully at this, you feel much more comfortable about how to use NeoPixel strips. You can use them on your own. For my students that are doing this as part of their semester project, I got a bunch that you can borrow in my office. Keep at it, coder. Light up the world.